Welcome to Comic Wars. Think of the show as Fight Night, but without the mess of actual combat. The data will speak for itself before the outcome, but in case it doesn't, we will break all of it down in the outcome at the end of the show. Alright, let's dive right into the overview. And just in case this stream ends up being a little shoddy, we are experiencing some pretty bad lag on our internet. Not really sure why. It could be a variety of reasons. But if there happens to be a ton of lag, I will be redoing the show tomorrow. It'll probably be either a very late night show or it'll be mid-afternoon. But, alright. Well, as usual, if we had a guest tonight, we would include their intro here and ask them about what their thoughts are about the fight tonight. But there's no guest tonight, so we'll be moving on to the next part, which is the background details. This is going to tell us height, weight, age, real name, maybe a day job or two. This is going to give us a little bit more background on how these characters are, who they are, and how they go day to day, what their personality might be, and the works like that. After that, then we get into the feats. What are going to be their greatest feats of strength, speed, and agility, durability, their martial prowess, their ingenuity in combat. Maybe they bring some gadgets into combat. We'll take a look at that. Maybe they have some powers. We'll take a look at that. And if they bring some magical spells, some kind of ritual, anything like that, we would analyze that as well. After that, then we get into the data analysis, which is going to be those feats and maybe some background details broken down further. Just that way we have full explanation as to what all these numbers mean, what kind of force these characters come packing, how fast they move, how fast they can dodge, what kind of damage or what kind of things that their gadgets or powers can do. We break all of that down here in pretty good detail here. But as you guys have noticed, there has been quite a few where we haven't really had to break it down too much because I break it down pretty well in the feats. After that, then we get into the characters' pros and cons. This is where we're going to take a look at their strengths and their weaknesses against each other, and sometimes against themselves. Something might hold them back from accomplishing some major feat in combat. This is where we take a look at that. Alright. After that, then we go over the guest analysis. This is where if we had a guest, they would take the data analysis, the character pros and cons, the feats, background details, and they would just basically analyze it for themselves here. This is where they would break it down, what their thoughts are. And then we would go into the outcome. This is where we just essentially break down who wins the fight, why, what kind of scenarios it would take for the opponent to win, what kind of things it would take for stalemates, things like this. All this is broken down here. We're going to really look at a percentage. What is the percentage first participant wins over second participant, or vice versa? We're going to look at who the winner is and by how much on a percentage scale. Alright, without further ado, let's dive right into our first competitor. Tonight we're looking at Wolf. His real name is Curtis Fox. He is hailing from the Crowworks Comics universe, which is getting turned into Crowworks Entertainment here pretty soon. The business name it's almost there, don't worry. But he is of my creation. He is approximately 20 years old, a little over. I mean, if you were to compare by today's standards, he's a bit older. Because he would be 12 years old, and he'd be about 32 years old. That's as of today's standards, but for this, where we're at in the comics, he is 20 years old. As for his height, he is 5 foot 11 inches tall. His weight, he is 180 pounds. His occupation, well, he's a vigilante / assassin, because he does carry out hits. However, he does take a look on the morality scale. I know it seems kind of weird, an assassin with a moral scale. Very interesting. But he's not going to go kill somebody that's good, if you will. He's more interested in taking out evil. His area of operation primarily is Rain City, so this is mainly where he is going to carry out his vigilantism, his hits, things like this. It's whatever is needed. As far as personality, he's cocky, he's arrogant, he's often underestimates others. This can give him a huge disadvantage at times, but more often than not, he has a lot of reason to look down upon a lot of his opponents. They're usually not as skillful in combat. But he's also, on top of that, he's very, very aggressive. Prefers to fight over anything else. Believes everything could be settled through a fight. And he refuses to give up. He's pretty persistent. As for some little tidbits about him, well, he's best friends with Daniel Parker, who's also known as Crow, and Antonio Rolfe, who is also Debug. He's also got a very one-sided rivalry with Crow. Crow doesn't view him as a rival and actually kind of views him and Antonio Rolfe as almost like younger brothers to some extent. But Wolf views Crow as quite the rival. And if anybody wants a good comparison, take a look at the comparison between Might Guy and Kakashi. It's kind of like that kind of a relationship. Might Guy's constantly going after Kakashi, viewing him as that is his rival. Kakashi views him as kind of a rival, but more as kind of just like a goofball and a friend. So that's very similar to how their relationship is. As for some feats, now this is where things get interesting. We're looking at his strength here. Well, he's got some very strong sword swings. He's capable of slicing through the barrel of a mercenary's tank. Keep in mind what tanks are made out of. We're talking high-grade steel. Get where this is going, and he's able to go and cut through that with a single swing. He was able to do that before he was 20 years old. This was just prior to that, when he was on a mission, he was able to do that. This is all shown off during Rain City Origins, which is where we really go over their backstory, as to, you know, from where they started, essentially their journey to becoming who they are currently in the comics. And Curtis end up going through a whole lot of stress, just all from Daniel Parker running away. And later picked up, and he became Wolf through that. However, we'll get more into that in a bit. But he was able to accomplish this on his first real big mission when he took on some mercenaries that were over in the mound, also known as Megiddo, over in Israel. He was going there to go and collect some items, if you will, from some mercenaries over there that were occupying that area. As for his durability, well, he's taken a single hit from Reaper, who is strong enough to rip a car door off right from the hinges with one hand. He was even able to still move. Couldn't really fight after that, but he was able to withstand that. As for what he's wearing, well, he's got carbon fiber weave plate armor. And if you can see right there, he does have chainmail on as well, but the plates themselves, they are carbon fiber weave plate armor. As for speed and agility, well, he's more acrobatic in combat than Crow. Crow is considered, if he is up there with the likes of Nightwing and Robin when it comes to his acrobatic fighting style. He's up there with them. He moves around a lot, flips over opponents. He tries to go and confuse his opponents and be able to avoid as much damage as possible. Even when they really can't hurt him, he's going to be flipping around because it gives that momentum. So he can come down with some really heavy slams and things like that. Wolf is far more acrobatic than that. He's even easily able to evade multiple attacks at the same time from Shinigami, which are just... They are... think thugs, like henchmen, if you will, for like... But we're talking like highly trained henchmen. Even Wolf at one point was a Shinigami. He was part of the Death Gods, which is just globalized, well, a secret society of. They consider themselves vigilantes, but really they were assassins. It's very similar to Batman's League of Shadows, if you will. Just it's a lot different at the same time. I mean, it's similar, but it's quite a bit different. But he's been able to evade multiple attacks at the same time from them, and he's evaded automatic gunfire from roughly 5 feet away with ease. He was also able to do that in Rain City Origins as well. As for his combat capabilities, well, for his martial prowess, just to kind of look at what he is capable of when it comes to hand-to-hand combat and his martial arts skills, he is trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Aikido, Karate, Kendo, fencing. He's a master marksman, master swordsman, and he's mimicked and perfected several anime swordplay techniques because he is incredibly obsessed. He's a genius when it comes to swordsmanship, but he does prefer firearms. So he's not a master when it comes to his hand-to-hand combat. So he's not up there with Crow and the likes of hand-to-hand combat, really. But when he's got his weapons, that's where he becomes comparable. So as you can see, he's pretty well versed. You can see he comes with a sword. He has some handguns. We'll get more into it in a second. As for his ingenuity, well, he tries to keep his fights at a distance. He always attempts to anger his opponents in order to keep them focused and irrational on him. He utilizes his grapnel launchers to keep the opponents confused and at as much of a distance as possible. And you can see those grapnel launchers are the same as Crow's. These are from the Death Gods. This is a standard issue equipment for the Death Gods and New Gods. But he relies on guerrilla warfare. He is very, very good at it. He's immune to sprays and gases thanks to his rebreather and his actual whole mask. He relies on stealth to ensure quick victories rather than prolonging combat. He'd prefer just to go and get right behind you and get you at your weak point, take you down for the count right off the bat. He also comes equipped with a glide cape. Yes, his cape is the same as Crow's in that sense, as he can glide with it. His is a little bit different because he's more weighted toward the head, as you can see. He's got the hood and all this. So his, if he barely even leans, he will go into an instant dive bomb, which he prefers, because then he can go, right when he goes into that, he can go to rapid launch just to kind of catch himself, and he can come in with a sword strike at that same point just to go for beheading and things. This is his signature type of techniques when it comes to combat. As for the gadgets he comes with, very standard issue, very similar to Crow. Comes equipped with 5 smoke pellets, 5 flash pellets. But he's also got his Predator Wakizashi, as you can see it's a sword there. That's a serrated tungsten carbide blade. It's very, very hard, very, very durable. But it's serrated, which is also meant just to go and rip and shred and mash and just wax flesh. So, and even then, if it's not flesh, he can go and, just like a saw, he can cut through wood. But he's also capable of using his sword to also cut through tanks. Just through the tank cannon, if you will. You can cut right through the barrel of the cannon. He's also got 2 Colt 1911 handguns. So he does have 2 handguns, and he's got his sword. Just going to show you what he's got. He also, for ammo, he's got 1 magazine of napalm ammo. This is ammo that once it hits, it smashes into something, it does, there is going to be some napalm coming out as it's coming through, as it's fired. But once it hits, it releases as much as it can, depending on how close they are. But it is napalm, and because there is that friction, it will ignite upon impact. He also comes equipped with 1 magazine of acid ammo. Now, this acid is strong enough to go and just go right through steel. Doesn't take very long, it can cut right through it. This was actually highly effective in his battle against Red Hood in round 1. This actually was the reason why he was able to win. It gave him such an edge because he can go through his armor, and now he's just going to be flesh, and he can go and take him out that way. So this might actually be a pretty big game changer here, as it is pretty powerful. He also comes equipped with 1 magazine of explosive ammunition. Now this is just small arms explosives, so this doesn't really, it's not like the same type of explosion you'd see from like a grenade or C4. No, this is far less powerful, but it's enough that it gives a concussive blast. A little miniature one. But he's also got 2 extra magazines of hollow point ammunition. Keep in mind, both of his handguns they come equipped with their initial magazines. And he's got his 2 Gauntlet grapnel launchers. Doesn't have any extra ammo, so once he's out, he's out. But he's not the type to really use it a ton. So he uses it pretty sparingly. As for his opponent, though, who is he going against? Oh, that's right. He's going against Batwoman, who hails from DC Comics. Her real name is Catherine Kate Kane. She's 32 years old. She is 5'11", and she weighs 140 pounds. Her occupation, though, is she's a vigilante, a socialite, and businesswoman. And her areas of operation, well, is primarily Gotham City. As for her personality, she's determined, dedicated, level-headed, and depressed. Seems a little weird, but now we're dealing with some mental illness here. Depression is... She's had a lot of grief in her life, and that's what this comes from, is the amount of grief she's had. It does take its toll on her. Now, we don't really see a whole lot of it in combat, so we can't really say this does affect her, but she is depressed. Okay, so she's got that negative quality with these 3 positive qualities to her. So that's kind of how she works out. And we are definitely having some issues with the internet. As for some miscellaneous information, well, she's the cousin of Bruce Wayne, who's also Batman. Keep that in mind when it comes into this. As for some feats, well, for strength, well, she's capable of punching through stone statues in a single punch. We're talking stone statues. Solid stone statues. That takes quite a bit when it comes to a punch. She's capable of staggering both Bane and Killer Croc with her hits. And she's capable of throwing and kicking large objects several feet away from her. Once again, takes quite a bit. You also got to take in consideration she's kicking with such a high force that her 140 pounds, to also keep her balance and all this, because kicking with that much force and not having a whole lot of grounding, she'd fling herself, or it could actually essentially make the impact of her kick and throws quite a bit less. As for some durability, well, she's tanked full force blows from Bane and Killer Croc and only received cuts and bruises. Keep in mind, these guys are capable of just lifting cars over their head, and Killer Croc has even gone toe-to-toe and injured General Zod, who is another Kryptonian under the Red Sun, so he's just like Superman. And he's been able to injure him. Keep that in mind. That's how powerful, that's how much durability she's got. So, keep in mind, only received cuts and bruises. She's survived being stabbed in the heart, capable of shrugging off several bladed weapon wounds, and she has enough mental fortitude to fight off psychic attacks. Well, you don't have to really worry about the psychic attacks with Wolf, that's not what he does. As for speed and agility, she has a reaction time of 50 milliseconds, that's 6 to 8 times faster than human eye can blink. And she's also a senior elite level gymnast. This is going up towards she's Olympic level. She's very accurate. As for her combat capabilities or martial prowess, well, she's trained in modern army combatives, which is a mix of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, Eskrima, and wrestling. And she's also been trained in boxing, Orthodox and Southpaw, Karate, Krav Maga, Muay Thai, stick fighting, Taekwondo, and Wing Chun. She's also a throwing weapon master and an expert marksman. Keep this in mind. This all goes into it. Now, she's not a master, but she's an expert. But she has throwing weapon mastery. Remember how this plays in, okay? Now, ingenuity, well, she's also another stealth user. She's stealthy enough to even ambush Batman, who is the king of stealth. There's nobody better than Batman when it comes to stealth, but she was stealthy enough to ambush him. She's infiltrated an airborne military airship without being detected and subdued 3 soldiers before choosing to make her presence known. She could have remained unknown. And she's stealthy enough to avoid detection while figuring out guard patrol routes during a mission, and has a limited sense of strong electromagnetics due to gold stitches in her head. Okay, so not everything here is going to be useful, if you will. But let's get into her last bits of her feats or her gadgets she comes equipped with. Grapple gun, batarangs, fear toxin. You heard it. She's got some chemical warfare going on here. She's got her cryo baton, which is just a battle staff. Flamethrower gloves, taser gloves, smoke pellets. And she's also got a python coil, which is a lasso type weapon that constricts and cuts into a victim the more they struggle. Think like the lasso of truth, but not about forcing the truth out rather than harming the victim. It's quite terrifying. So, a lot of it, like I said, I broke it down. We're even going to be skipping data analysis, but it's really, we don't need to break anything down. We know what all this is. Now, when it comes to her batterings, I want to make something very clear when it comes to her gadgets. Everything we've seen, there are times where she's got specialized gadgets, but more often than not, what has she got? She's got the standard batterings. That's all we really see a great deal of her using. And we know she's got the remote control one. She's given by Nightwing. We know that she's also got access to Batman's gadgets and equipment. Because, well, she's cousins of Batman. You don't think he would share? Of course he would. He shares with the Justice League, for crying out loud, so I think he would share this with her as well. So, that's what we've got. So I'm going to give you guys some time to think about what you guys have seen. I'll give you guys till 9:28. Just like a minute. Okay, maybe it wasn't a whole minute, but regardless. So let's go and look at some pros and cons here. So, what does Wolf got in his background? Is there anything there? So we know there's nothing that hurts. We know that one's aggressive, not really level-headed, always underestimates. So, but he never gives up and he's cocky and he's arrogant. So he's, yeah. And she's level-headed, determined, dedicated, but she's depressed. So could he still lay into her a bit and kind of egg her into her depression? Possibly. But not really all that likely. She's very level-headed, so it would take quite a bit, and he underestimates, so. But, so it doesn't really look like background's going to play any key figure here. So let's take a look at some of their feats. So strength. Strong sword swings capable of slicing through the barrel of a mercenary's tank. Well, using a sword, she doesn't have a sword. Let's see what she's got. Punch through stone statues in a single punch. Capable of staggering both pain to a croc and throwing kick. Okay. This is where I would argue they're pretty even. He'd have to rely on his swords. Okay, so take away his weapon. So I'm going to give him a plus and a minus here. But at the same time, he's capable, should, hypothetically, could potentially go and cut right through, he should be able to, well, he would actually be able to go and cut right through her armor most likely. As it is a fabric. end of the day. Even if you include some hardened armor plating in there, could he still cut through it? Yes. Pretty debatable that he could. Plus it's serrated, so he should be able to rip right through. So some things about that. So as for durability, because she doesn't have any, there's no real negative there for her. It's a plus or it's a positive and negative for Wolf, though, because if it came down to hand, he doesn't have any solid advantages in hand-to-hand versus her. So that's not going to go well for him. But if he's got his sword, he can go toe-to-toe. And that's in close quarters combat, potentially. So durability, well, he's been able to take in a single hit from Reaper, who's not as strong as Bane or Killer Croc. So durability, but for her, see, that's the thing. She's got better durability. She definitely has the better durability for sure. There's no question about that. We don't even have to even look at hers, but we're going to. She tanked a full force blow from Bane and Killer Croc and only received cuts and bruises. Once again, this comes back to these are guys that have been able to hit, or well, Killer Croc has been able to harm General Zod through sheer strength alone. That says something. And she was able to tank a hit from him with only cuts and bruises. And she's also been survived being stabbed in the heart. Well, he has nothing like that. Also capable of shrugging off several bladed weapon wounds. Bladed weapons can cut her. See, which means her suit isn't slash proof, which really, this is where we actually have to go back to Wolf. And if he's got his sword and he's able to go and hit her, we're talking, he's got a huge advantage with his weapon at this point. So, we're going to give her because we're looking at pros and cons, we have to give her a -2, because if she does take a hit from Wolf with his sword, it's over. Alright, now let's look at speed and agility. This is where things get a little interesting. He's incredibly acrobatic. Now, he's nothing like how we've looked at Daedalus, or Icarus, or even Nightwing. He's nothing near there. I mean, well, he is. He's up there. But when it comes down to it, Crow is up there with Nightwing, okay? Who's considered one of the best gymnasts in all of DC. He's not quite as good as Nightwing. Nor, like, he's near, but he's not as close as Wolf is. Wolf is up there with Nightwing. I wouldn't say better, though. But he's also been able to easily evade multiple attacks at the same time from Shinigami. And he's evaded automatic gunfire from roughly 5 feet away. That is insane amount of speed. Now, this is going to be comparable. This is where we're going to get a little interesting here. So now we're going to go and look at her speed and agility. It has a reaction time of 50 milliseconds. With 6 to 8 times faster than human eye can blink. So when we're looking at her capability of dodging, they're roughly the same. Now, I believe she hits slightly faster. Slightly. So we have to give that to her. But not by much. Like, not by much at all. And you'll see this is when it gets down to this. I mean, when it comes down to her capabilities, to like her mobility, she's not as mobile. She has a faster reaction time slightly. So when it comes to sheer like her agility-ish, if you will, like her capabilities of movement, she doesn't win. But as for her capabilities, her reaction time, for instance, it is greater. This is where we get an interesting one. This is actually a first of its kind, because we have to look at both speed and agility separate and their movement capabilities. Doesn't mean their reaction time, because this is where this breaks down. Their agility, Wolf is faster. So Nightwing has been proven to be faster than Batwoman, like, easily. And he's directly up there with Nightwing. But he doesn't have the reaction time that Batwoman does, who's got an insane reaction time. That's where she takes the cake. She's got a faster reaction time, but she's not as agile. Okay. As for martial prowess, this is where things also take kind of an interesting turn here. So now we have to take a look at... Oh, it is the right one. When it comes to hand-to-hand combat, he doesn't even compare. But he's got her on 2 areas. He's a master marksman. He's a master swordsman. And he's also mimicked and perfected several anime swordplay techniques. This doesn't... it takes time for him to do it, but it's the fact that he can mimic and he can perfect them. So not only is he doing it better than those anime techniques, so he perfects them. Keep in mind how outlandish some of these anime swordplay techniques are at times. They're quite outlandish, and he's able to do it because of the way he fights and the way he moves. He's able to go and accomplish these things. So this plays in a lot into his master swordsmanship. When it comes down to him with his sword and a gun, if he's got his weapons, he's got a huge advantage. We have to give... It's a double plus for just with weapons. No weapons, that's a double minus. So he doesn't even compare. And this is where we got to go. She's got her throwing weapons. This is going to be her strength, but she doesn't win them. And when it comes down to her hand-to-hand combat, she wins there. She easily wins there. Like, not even a problem. It's the equivalent of he's got his sword versus her hand-to-hand. That's where things are going to take the turn. Okay. So this is where that kind of comes down to. She's going to have to go and basically evade his techniques on this. But keep in mind, I want to go make that very clear because this is where we get into it, the ingenuity. Tries to keep fights at a distance. He doesn't even want to fight with his sword if he doesn't have to. Always attempts to anger his opponents to keep them focused and irrational. She's level-headed, so that won't work. Utilizes grapple launches to keep the opponents confused and add as much of a distance as possible. She's got a grapple gun, so she's going to be able to go and move around with him as well. Plus, she's got a reaction time that's faster than him. So this is where this gets a little interesting. His ingenuity, you got other factors that go into it. But he also relies on guerrilla warfare. But he's immune to sprays and gases, so her fear toxin has no effect on him. Relies on stealth to ensure quick victories rather than prolonging combat, and he's got a glide cape. She does not. Because hers, she just uses her grapple to get away. We don't really see any, let's use the cape to glide away. We don't really see that in the comics. In the movies we do, but we don't really see that even in the TV shows. So when it comes down to ingenuity, we have to look at hers, which she relies on stealth. They're going to be able to go and be up there on the roughly same level of stealthiness. Let's break that down. So if you look at hers, she's stealthy enough to even ambush Batman. So you could argue she's either as good, if not slightly better, than Wolf on his stealth. But she has also infiltrated an airborne military airship without being detected, and then subdued 3 soldiers before choosing to make her resistant. So therefore, her stealth is pretty well up there. But you're basically going to cancel that out. So now we're not looking at that. And then she doesn't have any use for strong electromagnetic sense. He doesn't use anything like that. So really, she's very, very reliant on stealth, and he's not. Essentially, is how this works out. You can go and argue, he is, but if you're canceling the stealth out, this is all her ingenuity really relies on. You look at Wolf, it's not entirely relied upon just stealth. Just a show. Tries to keep fights at a distance. So that's his focus, is keeping those fights at a distance. Always attempts to anger. So he's going to be sitting there provoking her. He utilizes his grapnel gun or grapnel launchers. She's going to utilize her grapple gun at the same time. But he relies on guerrilla warfare. She's going to be taking a look at patrols and things like that. So she'll be looking for him. And she'll take note and all this. And she'll see patterns. So this is going to come down to, is it going to be a short battle or a long battle? Wolf doesn't like he doesn't like prolonged combat. So he's going to do everything he can to keep it to short combat. Because the ingenuity, it's going to go to him. Because she's only got her stealth focus. She doesn't really have anything to really counter everything he's got. She can counter majority of it, and she's going to be able to go and keep up with it. But it's pretty close when it comes to ingenuity. Last but not least, we have gadgets. So this is where things are going to get a little interesting here. We've already talked about the gadgets a little bit. So we already know this is going to get interesting. It's going to get very, very dangerous real quick. So they both got smoke pellets. She doesn't come equipped with flash pellets, and she's not necessarily immune to a flashbang. So flashbang could affect her still, could disorient. But he's got his sword, the Predator Wakizashi. Keep in mind, it's not a big sword, it's a Wakizashi. And it's serrated, and it's made of tungsten carbide. He's got his 2 handguns. Now, if it gets in close, he's got an advantage because of his sword. She's got trained in it, she knows how to go and disarm and all this. He's a master swordsman, which means he is very, very well versed in the way of hand-to-hand combatants trying to disarm. Okay? But he's going to try and keep this fight at a distance. Therefore, what has he got? 2, 3, 5, 7 magazines. 12 bullets. And he's got 3 magazines, which is going to be a total of 12, 24, 36 36 bullets that are specialized ammo. Now, she's not necessarily, like, she's flame proof. We've seen that she's, just like Batman and all this, they can be caught on fire and they'll survive. Doesn't mean the heat wouldn't be there necessarily. As for acid, that'll go right through if the bullet doesn't, but we know she's not slash proof. Because, well, knife wounds, she's been stabbed, she's been slashed. Survives, fine, but her suit gets damaged. It's easily damaged that way. You're most likely just looking at a Nomex Kevlar weave with it's most likely a lighter Kevlar weave than it is Nomex. As for explosives, well, he can destroy the ground around her. He could do all sorts of things. He's a master marksman, so he'll be aiming for things like her grapple gun and things like this. Where he'll aim. Now she can do the same and use her grapple gun, but the thing is, he doesn't have the reaction time. But he's also capable of. He is very, very good. He has good reaction time still. When it comes to reaction time, they're pretty close. He's more acrobatic, and he's gonna be able to dodge, but his reaction, he's got a quick reaction time. She's just got a better reaction time. So that's where things are gonna get kind of interesting, because now you're looking like firing at things mid-air, throwing things mid-air, all this. This is where things are gonna get kind of funky. So this is where things are gonna get a little interesting too, because now we also have to look at hers. Look at her gadgets. Well, she's got a grapple gun. Batteries. Well, Fear Toxin does nothing. She has to destroy his mask for that to do anything. But she's got the taser gloves. She would have to be reliant on getting to his chainmail. She'd have to be reliant on touching skin. Or touching something that's conductive on him. Smoke pellets. Okay, they both got that. They're both trained in the way of that. She's going to be mostly reliant on getting him in very, very close combat. And then most likely having to use the Python coil to constrict. Those are going to be her best bets against him, because she actually has Fear Toxin, which is absolutely useless against him. So that sucks. It always sucks to see that, but it happens. When it comes to gadgets, though, I would definitely argue Wolf has got her on gadgets, because what has she really got? We're going to put a plus and minus because in close range, she's debatably got better, but you know what? Actually, no, because Python Coil would be also be cut. No, that could be cut by the serrated carbide. So no, she doesn't even get that because Python Coil would be cut. The cryobaton, hypothetically, you could probably cut right through that. So that should tell you. So let's break this down. Let's get into that outcome here. So who wins? Who wins this comic war between Wolf and Batwoman? Let's analyze. So, in strength, you have, in case of if he's using his sword, he's able to go and get his strike off. He's gonna go and he'll be able to defeat her on strength. But it's reliant on his gadget. So if he's disarmed, that's instantly taken out of the equation. Hand to hand, he can't beat her. But other than that, overall, she's got him in hand-to-hand combat. But if he uses his weapon, he's got an advantage with that alone. It's pretty significant in this fight. As for durability, well, this is where Wolf loses. Wolf doesn't have a better durability. No, she does. However, once again, he's got his sword. Her suit doesn't matter. He can cut right through her. So that's where things are going to get kind of interesting. Is if the sword's in play, her durability is basically as bad as his. When it comes to speed and agility, movement-wise, he's got her on agility, but when it comes to reaction time, she's got him. So far they're kind of weighing out 3-3 so far, more or less, but these aren't points, keep this in mind. But we're looking at where they're really going to be strongest at. As for martial arts capabilities, well, if he's got his sword or he's got his guns, well, his martial prowess exceeds that of her. However, it's hand-to-hand, she far exceeds him. Ingenuity, that goes to Wolf. And gadgets goes to Wolf. So you weigh this down. Wolf has got, handedly, as long as he's got his sword, he's got her on strength feats. He's able to go and easily counter, or his strength far exceeds that of what she's got. She breaks stone while he cuts through solid steel. Well, I guess you can't really say solid. Cut through the tank cannon barrel. That says something, and that's with a single swing. She breaks through stone, solid stone, and we're not even sure what type of stone it is. So when it comes down to this, we're looking, Wolf would actually win this. And now, I wouldn't argue that it's, a hands down Wolf wins every time. This gets into prolonged, that's not Wolf's, that's not his cup of tea. He likes to keep them short, sweet, go for the weakness, and just go in as a true assassin would. Go in and just go for the kill, right? If it gets into close combat, that's where Batwoman has got a huge advantage. And Wolf would be very, very reliant on using things like his acid ammo, but he'd have to be swapping things out. Well, she's got a faster reaction time than he does. So we're looking at about a 75%, 80%-ish Wolf wins in almost every scenario you can think of. The scenarios where, like I said, Batwoman will win. It's prolonged, and it gets into close combat, which is going to be exactly what Wolf will be avoiding, and it will be avoided very, very easily, because when it comes to their way of getting around, and it depends on where they're fighting. They're fighting in, like, let's say, the desert. Batwoman's going to be forced to close that distance. Wolf is going to be trying to go and kind of get away and get some kind of an advantage. So he'll be doing things like explosive ammo, firing at specific areas, trying to go and blow up her grapple gun. He might grapple her to, try to, kind of close the distance, but use it with a sword, things like this. She's going to have a fast enough reaction time. She could dodge. He's not going to be able to take a great deal of her hits, so he has to be avoiding her pretty much all costs. So this is where Wolf does take the cake, but it's not by much. But he does take majority. I mean, that is pretty clear. But thank you guys for tuning in, and we will be back Monday night at 9 p.m., maybe 9:30, with Steam Tech versus Nightwing in our final match of round 2. And then on next Friday, we will be starting round 3. So, like I said, I'm going to check on the stream. Obviously, we've had a lot of issues tonight, so I'm going to take a look. If there's enough errors or kind of too much internet lagging, I'm going to go and do the stream either later. Well, I'll do it tomorrow, but it'll be earlier in the day, or it'll be tomorrow night. But either way, you guys will be notified if you guys are on social media. So feel free to go and follow me over on there. You can find me on YouTube, obviously. You guys are watching me there. You can find me on TikTok under Strange Investigations, Rumble, and BitChute and Odyssey, also under Strange Investigations. So thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to go and hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed already, make sure to do so that way you will be notified. Oh, of course, hit that bell as well when you do that. So that way you will get the notification of new content that is coming out. And we will see you guys